no discussion of drummers is complete without mention of Terry Bozzio. His days as a member of Frank Zappa's group to his groundbreaking new wave band Missing Persons, his various roles in bands such as UK, the Brecker Brothers, Jeff Beck, and then his coming to the forefront of solo drum performance has Terry remaining an inspiration and an ambassador for percussion. Welcome Terry Bozzio to the show. Hi, Terry.
Well, thank you so much. Hi, and thanks for the kind words. I appreciate that.
Well, you're very welcome. And it's very difficult.
If I can live up to it.
And if there's one way to describe Terry Bozzio, in my eyes, it would be ever-evolving. As your career has progressed professionally and musically, your artistic views and your means of expression have continued to grow as well. Would that be accurate?
Yeah. All my heroes and influences were innovators, and they changed constantly, from architecture and art to, in pop, David Bowie, and in jazz, my main influences are Miles Davis and Weather Report. And, people like that, the day they do something, that's the day that genre changes. And I've always been inspired by those guys. And, I don't consider myself, like an innovator or anything, but, it does take more than a paragraph to describe what I do, It's not I'm not an easily marketed commodity.
No. And there was a time, I know, in the late 80s when Missing Persons was wrapping up, and you were saying, well, I'm at the age now where I can do this myself. And you kind of took the reins for your career in your own hands.
Yeah, and, that worked. We had our 15 minutes of fame. And, I ended up kind of beached somewhere, and the big lesson was I learned that being rich and famous is not necessarily a happy place. A lot of times you just make enough money to continue doing it, and if it's hell, then I'd rather starve and do exactly what I like, as an artist. So,
we see that a lot with people being, so famous and they have everything that they've wanted, seemingly, but then they're unhappy. But you've been able to forge your own niche. Now, you brought up something interesting about your influences being whether they're architecture or literature. I mean, your vehicle of artistic expression is music, drums and percussion. But what's so interesting about you as an admirer and a fan is that you filter all kinds of influences through what you do. Art, literature, like you said, architecture, even nature, I've heard you reference. And can you expound on that a little bit?
Well, Stravinsky, the great composer, said mediocre artists compose, better artists borrow, and great artists steal. So, when a master like that, I've read all his books, and when he says something like that, he takes himself off a pedestal and, describes his approach to composing and says, I compose by an act of delectation. I had to learn what that word meant, so I looked it up in the dictionary, and it says to find delight in. So this is a guy who, before there was recordings and things, he had to work in secret in a small room in his house with a slightly out of tune piano that he put felt on to muffle it so neighbors wouldn't hear him and steal his ideas, until he could write them down and send the pages to the publisher. So, you can just imagine a guy, searching for the right chord and going, no. I like this. And then start from there. And then something like The Rite of Spring comes out of it, So he just made it. He also said it was like a pig foraging for truffles. In other words, you stick your nose in the dirt until you find something.
Until you find something, good. Right.
Yeah. That took all this mystery and sort of, self-criticism and everything out of it. And music just became my hobby and my joy. And so I just constantly do it, and I love to do it. And I would love someday for everyone to... I must have like 50 compositions that are sitting in my computer, ready to go. But I'm a little too busy right now to get them out. But it's that kind of thing, You find... I think any artist, the true goal of any artist is to look inside, try and find something unique, honest, authentic, and beautiful that's really you, and then share that with others. Because, nobody else can be me. I can't be Billy Cobham. I can't be Buddy Rich. They did that way better than I could ever emulate them. And this is something I don't think we teach enough in our schools, There comes a time where you've got to go, okay, I know the scales and the chords, and I know this, and I understand that. And then you've got a bunch of musicians out there that just play that stuff they've been taught. And they'll play it way more perfectly than me or maybe even Miles, but I'd rather hear one, poorly played note by Miles than the best trumpet player in the world, running some exercises or something.
Right, right.
And I think that the whole jazz thing, like my influences basically are from classical music, from, the whole Western European scientific and art school of music has a whole lot of it's the language we use, so I try and use that language when I explain what it is I do. Then there's jazz, and not ding-ding-a-ding jazz, traditional jazz, but the freedom of jazz, the improvisation. This is a unique, not unique to America, but it's a unique genre that offers this freedom. And the true artists like Miles and Weather Report are people who improvise in a compositional manner. They don't just play crap that they've learned how to play. When it comes time to take a solo, they think about it. They dip into the unconscious, pull something out that's interesting, and at the same time they're focused on what that is, so that they can develop it and repeat it and retain it and make it work.
Right.
And that's what I like to do.
Yeah, and you do it.
I try.
You do it quite well.
Thank you. The third influence is ethnic percussion from around the world. I mean, there must be millions of different styles in Africa alone. Then there's the Middle East, and and with all of these influences, I try and name my pieces after the literal traditional rhythm that I am trying to emulate. And if you look at Stravinsky, we're all borrowing and getting inspired from each other around the planet, and we have been, since the dawn of time. Like Stravinsky was a Russian. He was very influenced by the French school. Debussy, who was French, a lot of what he does came from a world fair where, Japan opened up in late 1800s, early 1900s. There was a World's Fair, and Japanese music and art was there. And that really influenced him and Ravel. So, we're all, but at the same time, Stravinsky doesn't sound French and Debussy doesn't sound Japanese. They're their own persons, their own filter. So I try and look at things like that, not necessarily ripping somebody off, but being, so enthralled with the expression of a certain style that you want to pay homage to it or honor it by doing something that's reminiscent of or in the style of that, but coming through an American white guy who's a jazz drummer,
right.
turned rock drummer for commercial purposes.
It's when you're talking to Terry Bozzio, you have all these jumping off points that that inspire. It's like you're drumming. When you're playing your drums, we're taking on this journey as a listener and interviewing you. I notice that you say things that lead me to other questions, which is, the sign of a great interview subject. But when you talked about Stravinsky and the Rite of Spring, I read something, and I'll paraphrase these quotes, but he was saying that it came to him in a dream and that he was merely a conduit for it. Do you feel that way? Like when you channel just something that that's not really tangible when you're playing?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. When it's going right, I haven't got a clue, and I'm constantly surprised what comes out. I cannot take credit for that. I can take credit for practicing. I can take credit for following through on ideas and struggling to realize them. And I can take credit for showing up every day and trying to, get into that space where God or whatever you whatever you want to call it, for lack of a better word, comes through and just takes over. When that happens, man, it's the most amazing thing, and it's a beautiful thing, and I think almost every great musician talks about that.
Yeah,
every great sports guy, every great artist, every craftsman. I live in Japan a lot now. And I watch educational TV over there, and they'll do a documentary about a guy who just makes a box that someplace maybe in Washington or something, puts chocolates in, and then President Obama sends it to diplomats and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And this guy, man, makes the the most beautiful, perfect little wooden box, and it shows the whole process of how he makes it, and then how they cover it in this special handmade paper, and just the art and the dedication to a craft and to quality, and doing something right is just so inspiring. But they all talk about that same thing, when they're in the zone. It's like something's taking over them, and they just do it,
Musicians at large can go to drumchannel.com and see. It's like wandering through a wonderland, and I teach music, and kids today, I sound like my father, but
yeah, me too.
But there's not a push for them to dedicate themselves to a craft and to have attention to detail.
The government of America is a corporation, okay?
Right?
And corporations are running the whole thing, and it's on an economic basis. So they want enough stupid worker bees, to fulfill their rich greed and desires. And I look at the news and I just go, how many islands, how many yachts, how many mansions, how many golf courses do these guys want to own before they're okay? And then how many armies, how many fucking weapons and, whatever the hell else you want to have that gives you this sense of power do people need, I have a mentor, his name is Efren Toro, and he's from Puerto Rico. He's a brilliant Latin musician, played with Stan Getz. He's a brilliant jazz musician, was one of the first call studio guys, knows electronics, and has, taught MIDI to studio musicians in L.A. And, he studied with Vic Firth at the Conservatory of Music.
Okay.
He studied Indian music. He studied African and flamenco, and introduced the cajon and the djembe to the LA studio scene years ago, And this guy's just a genius. And he says, man, I live like a poor person, but I have a very rich inner life. And that to me is very inspiring. Yeah. Secondly, he said, we humans are very simple. After we have food, clothing, and shelter, we're curious. We want to learn. And the problem is America is just not teaching and not taking responsibility for the freedoms that we have. And, compared to Europe and Japan, the education system, is just so great. And the response to, the open-mindedness to new ideas, to different ideas is honored and touted, And here in America, it's almost like we're touting our stupidity. And I have faith in humans. I've had an experience one time in Iowa, and I played a clinic, and after the show, this guy comes up in coveralls and a John Deere hat and goes, "Look, I'm a farmer. I ride a tractor all day in my field. I know nothing about music." He goes, "But I brought my little grandson here because he wants to play the drums." And he goes, "I totally understand what you're doing. You're making music on the drums. And when you described everything you did, I totally got it. You spoke in terms that anybody could understand." And I just thought to myself, well, this is a farmer, so there is hope for me,
Yeah.
Even though this music business is so, everything's corrupt, I suppose, to a certain point, but it's really biased towards just making money out of, however they can use and squeeze it out somewhat, for mass consumption. It's like McDonald's hamburgers or something, and there's a lot of very interesting music, and as Slaninsky said in one of his books, the biggest problem for man, the source of all human problems, is non-acceptance of the unfamiliar. I don't know that, so it must be bad, And then, this is in a book that he wrote the worst reviews of the best composers from the time of Beethoven on. Comparing Debussy and Stravinsky and stuff to, a riot at a zoo or something. Right. Just like crazy things.
And it's in everything we do. And I think today people are being conditioned not to even attempt to find something new, You mentioned ethnicity or ethnic drumming in your playing and the influence it has on you. And I remember hearing a Ginger Baker interview, and he was talking about meeting the British jazz cat, Phil Seaman, and he said he turned him on to these African drummers, and these are kids who don't know what a paradiddle are. These are men who are using drums merely as a tool to communicate. And there's also something primal in your drumming as well. So you have to digest your chops, I'm guessing, and just put them in the back room a little bit.
I feel that natural musicians have something very, very special. And Efrain Toro talks about this a lot. He's got a book called From Linear to Harmonic. And, it's like it links the physics of music. Music is like a metaphor for the whole universe, Mm-hmm. Everything that we can perceive is within, I think it's 72 octaves or so of the electromagnetic field. Everything from our DNA to pitch to tempo to the revolutions of the planets and the sun and the galaxies is all happening in time. X-rays, radio waves, all this stuff is measured in frequency. Okay, frequency, if you slow it down, a G is maybe 80 beats per minute or something, Mm-hmm. And a G maybe in our hearing range, 20 to 20K hertz, is if you bump that up trillions of cycles per second, according to the law of the octave, it basically is the color red-orange. So everything is interrelated. Harmony is what the universe is. And these physical laws are so deep. So you have, and they follow like the harmonic overtone series, which is not a tempered series. We in the West look at things linearly, and there's the information is so the perception of the information is so one way or the other from our grid-like, standpoint or point of view that we miss the beauty of the notes that are kind of in between, which natural musicians use, and kind of play in the cracks rhythmically, mm-hmm. because they hear an overall pulse and they're able to subdivide more according to this harmonic overtone series. And, it's so deep that, for a guy who teaches music, you'll understand this.
Right.
I play an ostinato in 5. The name of the piece is 7 equals 5. Efrain tells me one day 7 and 5 are the same thing. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, if you take, you're playing this piece in 5, it's 3 plus 2. Now, 4 over 3, right? Yeah. And 3 over 2, right? Yeah. So stringing together linearly, and you have 7 over 5 perfectly.
Right.
So now I play this piece. I keep the ostinato. I start in 5. People's perception is that I'm in 5, and then I start playing in 7 over the top of that. And it's just like kind of a seamless morph. It's a very weird and uncomfortable feeling for us because it just feels like I'm changing tempo. But it's not. The tempo stays the same, the bass line stays the same, and the subdivisions are from a different perspective. So, all the great innovators, they look at things like this. They see things we don't see.
Right.
And then they share that with us, and then things change, right? And we disregard old ideas for new ones. And that, to me, is a very exciting thing.
We're talking about Terry Bozzio. You bring up music that kind of is challenging to listen to, and not that it's hard to listen to, but when you present something that maybe takes more than just a passive listen. And I go to sleep every night with music, and I put my little earbuds in, and I tried to pick something out last night, and it was Bartók, concert for percussion, and I think it's cello, and I couldn't listen to it because it was affecting me physically. Does that make sense?
Yeah. His music is very intense, man.
Yeah. I was like, I can't listen to this right now.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be in the right mood for certain things. You have to be open. I think, I call theaters a church for music, because then you're in the right receptive and comfortable environment to give yourself to a musical experience.
Right.
And there's something about live music in a room that's just so magical that cannot be captured on a DVD or a CD. And his music is very complex. His systems were deeply mathematical, and he was breaking the boundaries of how far harmony could be stretched in the West, much in the same way that the serialists did.
Right.
But the end result is what's the important thing. It doesn't really matter. I mean, it's wonderful to know that this music that's so crazy, like you name the composer, has a system and has a meaning behind it. Like Debussy was taught by César Franck, I think, and César Franck was the modulation king, and he asked Debussy, "What are you doing? Why don't you modulate?" And Debussy just said, "I'm doing this for my pleasure."
Right.
So
it can get too scientific in mathematics sometimes, and it kind of that's the balance of art, of the artist.
Yeah, I mean, Bartók, I love his music. I love the chordal harmonies and all that stuff. But if you look into it deeply, the guys who have written books about him talk about X cells and Y cells and Z cells, and he had a very serious system that he was using to find his way and his expression. Same thing with Schoenberg and Berg and even Stravinsky with the serialist 12-tone methods they would use. It was very mathematical and very inspiring, and very similar to drumming, because it's permutations of notes instead of permutations of rhythms.
Right.
So these guys were deep. These guys were very deep, and I mean, for me, I'm trying to make music on the drums. The drum set, has a sort of reputation as being an illegitimate instrument, right up there with the harmonica and the tambourine.
Right.
Anybody can play the drums, anybody can play the tambourine, anybody can blow on a harmonica. So, I say no. The drum set is a unique American invention. Mm-hmm. It has a history and a tradition, and especially in the jazz tradition, it's filled with innovators who have pushed what can be done on the drums, forward to the point of someone like Billy Cobham, who I don't think anyone's surpassed yet.
Right.
And, and I'm not going to give you a historical list of the great drummers that,
right.
There's too many of them.
We'll get to that. Well, what I'm trying to do is make music on the drums. I've always felt that way, and now my drums are tuned. The bass drums are tuned to bass notes. The toms are tuned diatonically for half the kit and chromatically for the other half. And I have a MIDI trigger system that has a sine wave, just a pure pitch that doesn't interfere with the acoustic sound of the drum, that matches the pitch I tune the tom to. So therefore, you really hear the melodies. And what I do is play melodies. Right. If for listeners who might be looking for a clue, if you can imagine Weather Report with melodies floating on top of a groove bass line and some ethnic percussion colors and orchestrational, treatments being thrown in, and, Joe Zawinul and Miles Davis, a guy who's emulating Joe Zawinul and Miles Davis playing those kind of melodies on the toms. That's what I do. Right.
And people get it, and I'm
it's beautiful.
So humbled and grateful.
Now, you did an album called Polytown, and the first time I heard it, it was nighttime. I was listening to WXRT. Barry Winograd, a friend of mine, does a show called Jazz Transfusion. This is, decades ago. And I'm hearing this music, and it's unlike anything that I've ever heard before. And if I knew, I could hear your tom-toms. I'm like, that has to be Terry Bozzio. And it's an album you did with the great late Mick Karn and David Torn. Tell us about that.
Two of the most beautiful people I've ever met, along with Patrick O'Hearn. Mm-hmm. I would just say those guys are soulmates of some sort, and I love what they do. And that was the first time I really felt that definition of unconditional acceptance of all the members and their ideas. You don't tell people like that how to play. You just let them do what they do, and they let me do what I do, and we all, make it work together. Mm-hmm. Mick is very interesting. I mean, he plays such innovative, unique strong, beautiful bass lines. And he claims he's not an improviser and he can't improvise. So a lot of the stuff he would sit there, he wouldn't be playing. And then when we would finish it and go, okay, we're going to make something out of this, he would take that tape, go into a practice room, and work out his bass parts, compose his bass parts, and then come back with the most backward-sounding, weird, wonderful, surprising, unique and wonderful bass lines. And Torn, have you ever seen the movie about Picasso painting? Where I think Truffaut did it, and he has like a white silk screen or something in front of him, and it's filmed, and you see Picasso just do 2 or 3 lines, and you just want to go, stop, it's perfect there. And then he does another thing, and you go, okay, stop, it's perfect there. And then he does another thing, and then stop, it's perfect there. And then before you know it, he's made this masterpiece. And then, he starts with another blank canvas, and it shows the beauty of his process, and how each stage of it should be a finished project. Well, Torn is the same way, and he would loop the process of him creating a loop. And there was all the, okay, stop, that's perfect, let's use that. No, oh, God, stop, that's great. Oh, man, it was just constantly evolving and this beautiful thing. And, they're both just amazing artists and dear, wonderful, warm friends that they're magnetic. You just want to be around them,
Yeah.
So, but the business was very hard. We did some touring and we did that record, but it was very difficult to make it happen for all of us, and us being in 3 different places of the world, it was tough as well. So, but I'm hoping in the future, one of the things I still would like to do, because otherwise I don't want to play with anybody, maybe except Alan Holdsworth and Mastelotto and Tony Levin.
Yeah, right. There you go.
Well, we did that, and I don't think Alan wants to do it anymore, but I would be willing to do that again anytime for no money.
Right.
But Tony Levin and David Torn are also close friends and have done records together. So, I thought that would be a cool trio to do. So maybe in the future I can, with his Tony's touring schedule with Gabriel and Crimson, and then Stickman, his own thing. And then my own thing. And Dave's doing movies and other things. It's very hard to get us all on the same page. So, I'm hoping.
Well, we'll hope.
Who knows, man.
And your Chamber Works recording with Metropole Orchestre is absolutely some of my favorite music of all time. Can you tell us about that massive undertaking?
Man, you know how that started? It started on an MC. Is it MC500, the Roland little, box, like sequencing box in the little yellow slanted case?
And the MIDI thing,
Yeah. It started on that with a Proteus. I got a Proteus orchestra, and I thought, man, these sounds are beautiful, and I just started chipping away. And I had maybe, 10 or 15 minutes of it. And I was living in Austin and traveling to L.A. From time to time. So I went to L.A. I think I was staying with Gail Zappa up at the Zappa house. And she said, Nicholas Slaninsky lives down in, like Santa Monica, you should go visit him. And I said, oh man, could you set that up? So I went and visited Nicholas and kind of became a friend and, wanted to go. And I got my books autographed by him and all that stuff. I mean, he's a deep guy. He conducted the first version of Perez's ionization, He was a pioneer of musicologists. And so, I played him, before he died, I played him what I had of that. I said, Nicholas, would you like to hear some music that I composed? And he goes, oh, yes. And so he puts on the headphones, and his eyes lit up, and he just said, oh, what is that on the oboe? High C? He had perfect pitch.
Wow.
And he goes, it's so rhythmic, and it's this, and it's that. And I'm talking about the beginnings of what was to become Self-Portrait with Scar, Opus 1. And he was so encouraging to me that I went home and finished the damn thing, and then just started to, have that. By that time, I think I had read all the Stravinsky books, and, Aaron Copland and some other people, inspired me to want to compose. And I lost that fear of competing with a master, 20th century master. So I basically just started chipping away and felt like this is just for me. And so I did it, and I spit out the note writing software, which was horrible at the time, on Performer, and red penciled it, and then I gave it to some friends in Vienna, Alex Markacek and Gerald Preinfeld. Alex is a great guitarist who I've worked with, and Gerald is a fantastic bass clarinet player. And they wrote out all the parts from the score, and I rehearsed, and we were able to premiere it in its sort of string quintet and what was it, woodwind quintet ensemble. And we premiered it at the Vienna Jazz Festival. And then after that, when I had the parts, I got approached by Metropole, and I did it with them. And it was, things like that are like peak moments in your life where you just want to be in the room when that's happening.
Well, the music is magical. Just a wonderful
thank
listen.
You very much.
You play the largest tuned percussion kit. Now, the addition of a new drum, cymbal, or percussion instrument, is that facilitated by a sound that you're looking to add, or do you add them and then bring more sounds? Do you understand what my question
both.
is? Yeah.
Both. Sometimes people give me things that are surprising, like I got a friend, he's from Albuquerque originally. His name's Paul E., and he makes wood-headed instruments, and he made me a wood-headed djembe, a wood-headed tambourine, and a wood-headed bongos, and they're just beautiful instruments, one of a kinds, handmade, and so I've been using the wood-headed djembe and the wood-headed tambourine, and they've inspired me to do a lot of things. Other times, I'll think, how could I get like a finger cymbal-y sound, for a Middle Eastern thing? So I'll take a DW tom mount. It's called a TB12. It's like a little oval thing with a wing nut on it that you use to clamp your tom onto the L bar, that holds it. And the screw holes in it are, you just put some finger cymbals on there and then find the right thread of a screw, and you've got 4 finger cymbals kind of sitting and rattling together, and it takes up a 4 by 2 inch space. So, I just bring it in and it's hidden in there, and I can play finger cymbals. So I'm constantly thinking of how I can make it easier, better, get something to be more, facile or, more flexible, more easier to set up, to do, to, get more sounds, expand the whole thing. And, in terms of inventions and tuning locks or electronic stuff or whatever, I'm just always, it's like if you make the thing that you work at your hobby and you want to do it quality, then every act of life, every breath can be of quality, It's, like the Zen tea ceremony. You're just making tea, And here in America, we put a paper bag in that tastes like crap in lukewarm water. And in Japan, it's a ritual that's equal in its beauty to a Roman Catholic high mass or something.
Yeah. Well, it's the attention to detail in everything we do, right? That's I can't tell you how much of an influence you've been on not only on the way that I approach playing the drums, which isn't to say I am anywhere near you, but just as an artist, just your view on life has just been something that's inspired me for decades. So, Terry, it's an honor to speak with you, and thank you so much.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And what you just said is, would probably make me like the way you play. Because I think, chops and technique, it's just a means to an end. But what somebody says from inside, what their intention is, that's where the real beauty is.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Mike. I wish we had more time. Thank you so much.